Reducing Your Workload with Fractional Executive Assistants with Valerie Trapunsky, episode 282. Are you ready to make your law firm a profit-generating machine that will free up your time and skyrocket your impact? With more than 2 decades of business growth experience and having proven that you can be successful while prioritizing your family and your impact, introducing the Profit with Law podcast. I am your host, the creator of the Firm Differentiator 10X Effect, Moshe Amsel. Well, hello and welcome to another amazing guest interview here on the Profit with Law podcast. I'm your host, Moshe Amsel, and today I have a treat for you. Let me tell you why this is a treat for you. I always start with I have a treat for you. So, one of the things that's been happening is the marketplace of attorneys is becoming more aware of the value of delegation. And I know this because finding staff and finding solutions to your staffing problems is the number one problem that's coming up in coaching calls, that's coming up in my coaching groups, that's coming up in emails that we're getting. And it is a tough road to navigate because you have more and more options in front of you. And today we're going to talk about yet another option. But the problem is that when you're trying to figure out, should I bring somebody on? One of the biggest challenges that you have is, can I afford it? Can I actually wing this person's pay? And if you start with, hey, I'm going to hire an attorney, that's taken off. That's biting a big bite into that sandwich. And what's going to end up happening is that you probably need to forego a bunch of your income in order to pay this other person's salary. And then you have to step into that. What if you can hire at the bottom? What if you can start bringing on the lower level staff, get a bunch of things off your plate, become more efficient, maybe even start charging more for your time, and then you step into those more expensive roles of paralegals and attorneys. And that's been the model that I have been encouraging my clients to follow. But when you start looking at those early hires and those support staff level positions, it becomes a minefield of what's available to you. So I'm excited because our guest today owns one of these companies, owns a company that will help you staff up in these situations where you're trying to grow. Maybe you're trying to hire your first staff members, or maybe you're trying to grow to that next level where you already have staff, but they're taxed, they're at their maximum, and maybe they need support. And they need people that you're hiring to support them. And I can't wait to jump into this conversation. Valerie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
It's absolutely my pleasure. And I really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation with me. And we had a little brief conversation in the green room before we started. So I kind of got the idea, and it's really fired me up for this conversation because I can see the possibilities for my listeners, and I can't wait to share this with them. So before we do, they want to know, who the heck is this person? We gave you a little bit of intro there, but tell us a little bit about yourself and how you stepped into this business that you're running, and what it's meant for your clients.
Yeah, thank you. That was a really good intro. Thank you for that. So I started my career as a personal assistant and a chief of staff. I had an opportunity to work with A-list celebrities and high net worth individuals. And I learned a lot of things from that role. Particularly what I saw in very successful people is that all of them had one thing in common when it comes to personal and executive assistant support. They never had just one person doing the work. They always had two. So there was always a backup and a person with a different skill set on my teams. And so after years of being in that industry, I was always passionate about entrepreneurs and about entrepreneurship itself. I always had a dream to be an entrepreneur. And so it felt like that perfect fit. I took my experience in that very particular niche and started offering it to entrepreneurs and business owners, but modeled on what that service looks like for individuals that that are at the top of their industries. And so It was a really, really interesting journey. And then working with entrepreneurs and seeing, right? So there was one piece of experience learning in real life from these really giants. But then the second piece has been learning from entrepreneurs, how they do their business, how they set up their systems, what they're struggling with. And between those two pieces, it's been amazing the amount of information. And so we've continued, we've always been for entrepreneurs and knowledge workers, individuals who are owning their own companies. And then, from there, we've continued to layer on, what we think is the best possible experience for an individual to have when working with EAs and chief of staff type of level support.
Very, very interesting. So I want to jump right into the line of questioning here, because I know that people are going to be like wondering, how to think about this and how to approach it. The first thing that I want to discuss is how do you provide your services? Because I think that's the first thing that we need to understand in order to start to think about possibilities as we have our conversation, because it's very unique. It's very hard to be able to hire a piece of somebody. And I think that's exactly what you provide. So lay it out for us. How do you provide your staff to your clients, and how is it billed?
Yeah. So I love how you said it, hire a piece of someone. I'm going to borrow that. Thank you. So the way that we work is that what we know about entrepreneurs and people who have their own business is that they spend anywhere from 30 to 60% of their time doing administrative work, whether they realize it or not. And so most of those individuals, many times in the beginning of their business, but a lot of the time, even when they're 5, 6, 10, 15 years in, do not actually need a full-time person. And sometimes they need this team of individuals who are doing these micro specialized tasks. And so what we saw in the marketplace is that, yes, you can go to individuals and you can hire for a copywriter, you can hire for a designer, you can hire for somebody to write your newsletter, etc. And that all takes energy and ends up actually adding to the administrative burden, the hiring in itself. So what we do is that we pair entrepreneurs to a dedicated and on-demand executive assistant. That person we look for is going to have the least amount of friction in terms of communication. So we kind of double down on personality and character match. And from there, that individual ends up being kind of your catch-all for all of the other things that you might need, whether they're specialized. And so you get paired to that person. That person does the majority of the work. And if they need the support, they have additional team members. We bill our clients by the hour, and we keep our time track down to the second. So all of our clients, once they sign up with us, we have an app portal, and they can see in real time who's working on what, how many minutes that project is taking. And they also see their project management system, where they see what are the upcoming tasks and projects that their team is working on and when those will be due.
Very interesting. So, as you laid it out, I can potentially engage you for just an hour's work, right? Is there a minimum amount that we need to be ready to give you in order to start working with your company?
Yes. So we have a very minimal minimum, which is 5 hours a month. So just a little bit over an hour a week. And that's all. And so we're designed to have consistency. Even if you are handing off one small task that takes an hour, there is consistency. We are continuing to stay in contact with you. And then we're designed to grow with you. So if you are then needing 5 hours a week, 20 hours a week, you might need to start needing 40 plus hours a week. The team is designed to grow with you and to add those additional hours, whether it's with the dedicated person and a lot of the time with the additional team members that we have.
Now, what is are you willing to share pricing with us here on the show?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. What is the EA? So when I start, right, I reach out to you and I say, hey, I need an executive assistant. What does that cost per hour?
So we have 3 layers of support. We have a partner level assistant, a pro level, and an admin. At the partner level, it is a do it for you solution. It is when you are coming to us and you're saying, here, take this off of my hands. I have no idea how to do it. And I know that I need it done. And I want to trust you as the professional here to, to get this project completed. That's at the partner level. At the pro level, it is a do it with you solution. So this is where you have an idea of how you want this project or task to be completed. You explain it to us, and then we run with it. So we do it together. And then we have the admin level support. This is low intensity process fulfillment projects. So once we have a great SOP built for it, which, by the way, when you are working with our assistants, everything that we do, we always build those SOPs in real time so that there is continuity, both for our internal team members, but also for you if you will ever need it. So those admin level tasks have been, the SOP has been created, it has been tested, and now it can run with the admin level assistant. So the idea is always for us to get projects into the hands of the individuals who are best suited to do them. And so at the lowest possible price point.
Now, what if I'm not up to projects and needing a team and all of that, and I simply just need somebody to answer my emails for me? I need somebody to just get some proposals out. Which level is that at? What kind of person am I looking for?
Yeah, it's a great question. A lot of people have that question when getting started. So our onboarding process, first of all, sometimes entrepreneurs, business owners, they get stuck with this because they think about this question, whether it's the level of service or just how do I get it started? And then this is where they kind of stop the process. So with us, we do a deep dive into your specific needs, how you're currently working, how you would like to be working, and your 6-month goals. We break that down for you. So there's very minimal input from you, and we're able to we then do the homework and create the roadmap for you. So it's a conversation. The truth is, with email, it could be at our highest level of delegation, or it could be at one of the lower levels of delegation, and it will depend on the kind of things that come through there, and the kind of work that the individual will need to be doing. But I just want you to know that all of the individuals that we bring on, when we look at their character, they will look very similar to what a chief operating officer would look like, right? Not necessarily with all of the experience at the lower levels, but character and personality wise, how these people are going about problem solving. They're really project managers. So that's just a little bit of extra in terms of how we bring on individuals to our teams.
What are you using to screen them to be able to determine that? I imagine it's a personality test of some kind, right?
Yeah. So I have a second company, which is which I'm working with an individual who has spent 30 years creating this character assessment. And we've been extremely lucky with ChatterBoss for this partnership. This character assessment has been used in the Olympics. It has been used in Fortune 500 companies for C-suite hiring. And we're using it for ChatterBoss to screen assistants, amongst other things that we do for screening, but for character in particular. And so we know very well the character of our assistants. And then clients, when they come in, we also give them an opportunity to take this assessment. So we can pair you without doing it, but if you give us the opportunity, we will pair you using this sophisticated software. And then we know from both sides. And that's when I say, I know that I can make a match that is the least amount of friction as possible, and why I double down and over index on personality is because this role sometimes ends up being a catch-all for everything. And it may be that you're giving this person things that are not in your competency and not in their competency, but you guys need to have good enough communication to be able to together know where the projects need to go.
Okay. So I'm going to go back to somebody who's never hired somebody before. They're running completely on their own. We'll march down the road to somebody who has more specific needs. somebody in that role, they might not even know if they're ready, right? They just know they're overwhelmed. They know that they're spending way too much time in their business. They know that they're doing everything and they shouldn't be. So they have the awareness of the problem, but they don't know how to get out of it. They don't know what are the tasks they should be delegating. Is that something that you help them figure out when they introduce themselves to ChatterBoss? Is that do you have some exercises you take them through to try to figure out what can we delegate? What can we help you take off your plate? And it kind of like an action plan of getting some of that stuff delegated and taken and transferred over.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a system of saying your input is your stressors and the things that you know about your business, the things that you consciously know that you need to delegate and outsource. And then there might be some things that are causing stress, but not in the forefront of, I know that I need to delegate and how I'm going to delegate it. So that's the way that we do the input from you. Then we process this information and we look at the priorities and we come up with a strategy together. So part of your onboarding is a strategy session with our team who act as delegation coaches. They've seen hundreds of entrepreneurs and business owners go through this, and so that's what we do in that strategy session. What you get when you walk out of that strategy session is you will be very clear on the first 1 or 2 tasks that you will be handing off to your assistant. You will know how to hand those tasks off to your assistant. And you will also, within a week after that conversation, have your 6-month road plan. So we take it step by step. We don't want to, especially somebody that's overwhelmed, a lot of the times they can come to us, what I kind of consider, or could consider them in this like too late category. I'm stressed, I'm overwhelmed, I still don't know how to delegate it. And so there is this kind of like chaotic feeling for them. And sometimes those individuals, what they really want is to say, hi, finally, I'm ready to delegate, take all my stuff and fix it, make it better, put a bow on it. And so we always encourage individuals that are already in those stages. We still want to take it step by step. We still want to do it one project at a time. We want to take it very responsibly in order to make sure that relationship is strong and has a solid foundation, and then we can build on top of it. So whether it's entrepreneurs, business owners that are in the early stages, kind of mid stages or later stages, we'll extract what we need from them and they can count on us for that.
And one of the things that you shared that you do is you basically write internal SOPs for every single thing that's handed off to your team. So essentially, once I've delegated a task, you can do it over and over again, even if I didn't say, oh, I'm going to have to do this again a week from now. So the next time that I hand it to you, you just go back to your SOP and you have it. Does the client get visibility to those SOPs? Is this kind of a backdoor method for them to get their own SOPs written?
Yes, absolutely. Back door, front door, side door. This is the way for them to get SOPs created. The SOPs serve 2 purposes. One, it is almost like a contract between you and the assistant. So the assistant you are communicating with them your needs. The assistant then starts implementing and executing. As they're implementing and executing, they're also writing this SOP. So as the client, you have the visibility, and we encourage you to look at those SOPs frequently, especially in the beginning, so you can take a look, and this is your way to see, did my assistant misunderstand something? Like if your assistant is doing something, sometimes it's not totally visible to you that maybe they're not doing it the way that you want, but they're doing it the way that they understood or the way that they see best. And so this is kind of your extra checks and balances to make sure that it's being done the way that you want, or a conversation for brainstorming. Hey, I see we're doing it this way. Let's do it another way. The second purpose of these SOPs is that you have a backup assistant. So for the dedicated person that you have, for every client, every assistant has a backup. The backup is there in case your assistant is sick, they're away on vacation, something happens, life. And so your backup assistant steps in on those days or weeks, sometimes months, whatever it is, And the way that they can do your work is that they're looking at your SOPs. So sometimes when the backup assistant needs to step in, this is also an opportunity, an extra stress test for those SOPs. So you know that they're up to date and their quality.
Very interesting. Okay, so let's talk about how somebody should navigate. I mean, it's a service that we're paying for, right? So these are not, essentially, they're not my staff member. They're somebody that I'm inputting into my team. How does that translate into the growth of a law firm? So, what if I've gotten to the point where it would be less expensive for me to hire a full-time staff member than to continue to pay for my EA with ChatterBoss? Is there a potential to be able to hire my EA that's working for me at ChatterBoss onto my team directly? And if there isn't, what does the transition look like when I need to pull back because I'm now bringing somebody on in-house?
Yep. So I love that you asked that question. Over the 5 years that we've been operating, this has come up a lot. My ultimate goal is to be able to perform for entrepreneurs and business owners with the highest level of integrity, and keep their businesses moving. And I want to release them from the bottlenecks instead of adding any extra ones. And so all of that is to say that, yes, if you are having a good relationship with your assistant and you see that it is that one dedicated person that you need, more than usually, I think the math works after 25, 30 hours a week, you want to take them on internally. That is no problem. We have a clause that allows you to do a buyout of your assistant. And if the assistant wants and you want to work together, yes, there's opportunity for that. And we will help facilitate that. And, of course, all of the SOPs, everything else you have access to. But what's been interesting, this has happened to us a number of times. And so what usually happens is the assistant will go internally at that point, and they will keep their ChatterBoss relationship, and they will get in. So it's usually actually that assistant now gets an assistant from ChatterBoss and still has access to the rest of the team. And we'll usually keep the assistant within our assistant network as well, because it's extremely valuable. As assistants, there's new things coming out, new software, new questions. And so this is great. They have access to the rest of our team. Hey guys, I'm stuck with this. Has anyone seen this? Is this website down? And then you kind of still have the benefit. And the assistant also still retains access to that virtual family, which is really important for them as well.
Now, where are these people located? Are they in the U.S., outside the U.S.? Are they all over the country? Are they in a call center? What is the model that you have as far as their working environment?
Yep. So all of our assistants at the partner and the pro level are US based. Actually, I have to say 98% because, and I'll explain to you why. So you will have a US based assistant definitely on your team, at least one of them. And so they're all over the US, any state. Then usually at our admin level, we have an office in Cape Town, South Africa. That's where our admin level assistants are. And I'm kind of saying that there is this like small opportunity. As we've been operating now for 5 years, we now have admins that have graduated into the pro and even partner level. And so I still believe that your dedicated person should be in the same country that you're at. And that's the reason I say at least one member of your team will be in the US, but we now have these different combinations because we have individuals with really fantastic kind of skill sets, and they work for certain entrepreneurs. So you can kind of trust us that the assistants are vetted at each of those levels. But yes, US and South Africa.
Yeah, and interesting that when you said that when you bring the EA on full-time in-house, if you exercise that option, that they tend to then get their own EA from ChatterBoss. I'm a big proponent of any of your staff members having a assistant, virtual assistant, maybe not necessarily through ChatterBoss, but through any of the various channels that you can get a VA. I think that it's extremely powerful to empower just a line member of your staff to offload the tasks that they don't need to be performing, that the ones that could be performed by somebody who is less expensive than they are, and constantly pushing the work down to the lowest cost denominator to get the work done. So I'm a big fan of that, and I imagine that even a larger firm could engage ChatterBoss in that way, where we basically just use it to provide assistance to all of our staff, or all of our, at least our attorneys, and maybe even our paralegals, and things like that. So what are you seeing when it comes to law firms that are engaging with you? Is there a specific size law firm that you attract a lot of? Are you finding that this is primarily the solo and small firms that are using your services, or is it primarily the large firms, or it's kind of all over the place?
I want to say that it's a healthy mix, because you can find a use for us. If we're talking about the smaller firms, what they're really attracted to, they might not have any other staff, right? So this ends up being the first individual that they're getting support from. A lot of the times, it will then be, if that's the case, then you'll have someone at the partner level. You guys end up brainstorming with each other, just someone for accountability, just another person, right? So the smaller companies will use us in this kind of a way. Now, as they grow, a lot of the uses end up being this access to this larger team. So sometimes, yes, you can afford to have a full-time person, but it still doesn't make sense. And so we'll always, engage in that conversation with you. Sometimes it doesn't make sense because you don't want the one person to be a bottleneck, because if this person holds so much. And so what happens is, if they're out for a day, all of the operations stop. So in that case, sometimes people will cap out at 15 hours a week for their dedicated person, and then they fill in with smaller micro things from the rest of the team. So we have people use us at different sizes for different things.
Now, what about technology? Every law firm operates on something different. There's different practice management software, there's different intakes or CRM software. There's software for drafting documents. There's legal research software. There's email, there's phone. What systems does the law firm need to provide to the assistant? And does your team use all of, like, one license for all of those things, or do they need multiples, depending on what's going on?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So in terms of software, we can plug into the software that you are using. It's kind of the name of the game in this industry. New software is coming out every single day. And so it's interesting, right? When you'll come to us, part of the conversation is, what software are you using? How are you using it, et cetera? And then it's a really kind of delicate dance that we do in terms of, like, when we're doing the pairing, because that's one consideration, right? What software you need, but also the experience, and if you allow us, your character. So it's this trifecta. And so when we're looking at the software, the individual might not have experience with that exact software, but we will say, if it's CRM and bookkeeping, that the individual has other software that they've used. Usually the learning curve is not high once an individual has 1, 2, 3 pieces of software in that area. And then in terms of licensing and the getting access to the software, depending on what your software license is, you may be able to have one login for multiple individuals. So if you as an organization are using one login for 3 people within your organization, and that's how that login works, then that's great. You could do the same with the assistant. So the idea is that you can treat these team members the way that you would an internal team member.
Got it. And can you give me some examples of what are the types of things that law firm owners or staff members that are using your assistance? What are the kinds of tasks and projects that are being handed to your team?
Yep. So really popular are things like project management, having the individual in their email, their calendar and scheduling. A lot of those those three usually kind of live together, because if I have access to the email, I kind of have access to your to-do list, or I'm getting a sense for it. So those are three that it's really nice to group together. A lot of attorneys will, well, I shouldn't say a lot, right? Some like to write their own newsletters and create their own content, but most will have one piece of content that they enjoy doing. So let's say for you, it is you enjoy doing the podcast, but you really wouldn't enjoy writing a newsletter. You can have an assistant take the podcast and repurpose it into a newsletter. They can repurpose it into videos. They can also cut it down and use it for social media. So those kind of things, CRM. You'll also have service-based entrepreneurs and business owners who can use an executive assistant from ChatterBoss in a client success role. So that also ties into the email, but and the project management. But if you can have that individual interact with your clients, set timelines, work with the billing, make sure that the person is taken care of and gets fast responses while they wait for the attorney to do the work.
Now, you mentioned bookkeeping before. Is it common to hand off bookkeeping duties to your assistants? And are they already trained? Like, are they trained as bookkeepers, or is it something that kind of like the stuff that you would be doing internally, and your bookkeeper still is doing what the bookkeeper does, but maybe you're generating invoices and that's not something that you typically have your outsourced bookkeeper do, so you have your assistant do it? How does that play out? And I'm intrigued also because I own an accounting firm and we provide bookkeeping services, so that got my attention when you mentioned that.
Yeah, so for the bookkeeping, those will, for the most part, be specialists. However, not necessarily. They don't necessarily have to be specialists. So I'll explain. If you have things like pay this particular invoice, or when I forward you this and you have access to my credit card, you take care of the payment, book a room, etc. You can have your assistant do that. That extra next layer is you can have an assistant, and these will be specialists who have a background in some type of accounting or bookkeeping. They could be in your QuickBooks, they could be in your P&Ls. So depending on the structure, you can have, like, let's say you have your P&L built out, not much changes. You're pretty finance savvy, but you need things uploaded from QuickBooks every month into the P&L. You can have an assistant do that and take care of it for you. And so there's a number of different things, and that kind of support has been growing. So I'm sure that you have noticed the trend. That kind of support has been growing. So we have about I want to say 5 or 6 members of the team now that will be savvy with bookkeeping. Sometimes it is a executive assistant that has a background in bookkeeping, and that works really nice. Now, they will not be, a tax specialist, but it will be good enough for you guys to do all of the day-to-day. And now there might be some more advanced things that you need to go to your CPA, et cetera, on. But you may work really well with your assistant, especially because you and the assistant, you're interacting very often. So if there's like, hey, how do we code this? Is this something new? We're going over our budget. We have our assistants do that for some clients.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, it's imperative for somebody to keep their books up to date, because you need to, there's certain things you need operationally, like you need to know how we're doing. If we have a target that we're trying to reach, are we on target for that? Our expenses running a little hotter than we anticipated, and where do we need to try to back off of something? Also, if you have accounts receivable, which I'm not a fan of, I think that that's behavior, and you can actually overcome that, especially with law firms where you have retainers, or if you're using alternative fee arrangements, they pay in advance for services. So you really shouldn't have AR. But if you do, then you don't know what your accounts receivable is if you're not entering payments into the system, if you don't know what was paid and what wasn't paid. So you can't possibly collect on invoices if you don't know that they're outstanding. So it's operationally and from a owner decision-making level, it's extremely important to have the books up to date, regardless of tax questions and things like that. So yeah, there's definitely value there. Now, one of the things that you mentioned is project-based work. What kind of projects are you seeing law firms do that you're putting into this project category?
So in terms of project management, let's say you have other individuals on your team, you have other vendors, maybe you have other attorneys already on your team. Depending on how as an organization you're dividing up the work, most individuals will have a project management system, but sometimes as the founder or the CEO, the individual either doesn't like to or doesn't have the time to be on top of it. And so, a lot of like the angst that like we will experience from business owners is that, hey, we've been as a company talking about this for 3 months, I don't know, implementing this new system, and kind of no one owns it. We don't know who's still supposed to be doing it. We talk about it in our monthly catch up and it's still not done. Those kind of things is where if you have an assistant participate in those conversations, be in those project management systems, and then do the follow-ups like, hey guys, we have this monthly catch up, and someone actually kept an agenda and then did the follow-ups throughout the month, you have a higher chance of coming to your next meeting with some actionable items that you guys can improve and continue moving the needle forward in your business by implementing these new processes. And kind of same with clients, and that bleeds into the client success role. You can have it in your project management system, what you owe to clients, et cetera. And so sometimes if the members of your team aren't looking there, you may miss a deadline. So this is your extra kind of insurance. And an assistant comes in and says like, hey, we owe this, I don't know, contract to the client by tomorrow. Do we need to communicate that we need more time? So that, just as like a client of legal services, that's where I've kind of struggled with a lot, is that I know that individuals are busy and I so respect the work. And if someone proactively tells me like, hey, we promised Friday, but it's actually now going to be next Tuesday, I'm not stressed. Take it easy, take your time. But if it's Monday and it was supposed to be Friday, I'm like, okay, now I am as the client project managing. And so that's the role that we want to fill in for clients if it's appropriate within their business.
Very, very interesting. To get visibility into this, what people are doing and how they're using it. And when we talk about it, it starts to trigger ideas, so our listeners, some of them are like, oh, I can really use it to do this and do that. Like maybe I always wanted to have some sort of gift fulfillment that I did for my client list. I never got around to it, but now I can hand it off to somebody and get it done. They can do the research, they can find the vendor, and gather the client list and upload it there. And maybe I'm sending out birthday postcards or something else like that. And I can hand that off. Or what about marketing efforts, right? I want to reach out to people and potentially get new referral partners, and I'll go and have lunch with them. But going and finding those people and doing the initial outreach and setting that lunch date is something that I just never get around to. Well, now I can hand that off to my assistant. They can do the research, they can find the people, they can talk to their assistants or to them directly if they don't have one, and then they can set that appointment and get me and just put me right into that. It's kind of like with my podcast. I showed up to this interview and I had never heard of you before, right? And my team reached out to you because they're constantly looking for new guests, and they set it up. So I just show up, and I think that's really where we want to try to get to, and it goes with everything. I mean, like I was thinking about, if you travel a lot, having your assistant make your travel arrangements. I mean, when I do that right now personally, because I have 3 little kids at home, and it's always like a juggle, not just the cost of the flight, but like what time of day am I leaving? It makes a difference. If the flight is at 9 a.m., I have to leave before the kids get off to school. That's more, I get into more trouble with my wife than if I leave at 1 in the afternoon, and I could leave after the kids get off to school. So, but being able to hand that off, that, it's a huge time consumption thing for me to book my own travel. Being able to hand that off to an assistant, having them take care of that for me, if I could just figure out how to give them the parameters to make the right decisions about, when and how and what airline and where I like to sit and all that stuff. But if you really think about it, you can come up with that. And I guess that goes back to this SOP process where I guess your assistants will extract that from me, right? I tell them, look, I want you to start booking my travel. What do you need to know? And then you'll work through that and write that SOP instead of me needing to sit there and figure it out, because I could see that being an impediment to me actually handing something off.
Yeah, absolutely. It all happens step by step. So it's not this daunting task that many entrepreneurs believe it is, that I first have to figure it all out myself. Then I have to train everybody for every hypothetical situation, and only then I can get support. That's why our theory that it is best to start with 1 or 2 very clear and small tasks. And over time, you're going to train your person or the team, right? And so that also eliminates, well, what if I spend 6 months training my person and then that's, something happens, they go on maternity leave, like what then, right? It's like literally 6 months of waste. And so that's when the SOPs and the backup assistant support comes in. But it's also, I wanted to mention, right, because we've talked about the different levels of support and we've talked about internal specialists, but then to the 2 things that you mentioned in terms of gifts and travel, for example, we have a person on our team that will do stationery by hand, and that's their specialty. So we've already have a vetted partner for that. So if you say that, we can plug them in very quickly. In terms of travel, yes, your assistants can do the travel, but in addition, we have an internal team member who we partner with, who has a travel agency, and they have special benefits. So there could be things that are coming up that your assistant can't do, or something needs to happen, then they plug in. So it's kind of like a full system of support. And when you take it to the next level, when you mentioned about marketing, the examples that you gave exactly is a good case use of working with an assistant. But if you say, I need overall marketing strategy, I actually do not know if I need a podcast. In that case, we may say to you, you know what? There are cases where we need to look for an individual that's very specialized that we don't have a contact with, and we will look for that person for you. So maybe we'll look for that marketing individual to do that work for you, give us the guidelines of how to execute, and then we know that we're actually reaching out to the right podcast guests, not kind of guessing in the dark. So we'll also always guide you in that direction if we see that. But then lastly, we do have a vendor list of all individuals that we've worked with that the assistants have rated well. So if you need a podcast, now you've decided to do the podcast, you need a podcast editor. We have a bunch of people that we've worked with on Upwork that are going to be good, and we know their price. If you need an animated video, we know individuals who have been used by other entrepreneurs, and they've given us a good feedback. And so it kind of just cuts down the time and also the risk that you're not going to go with the right vendor.
Yeah, and I imagine that I can hand off the job of finding that person and engaging them to the assistant, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's part of the hassle in getting these gig workers for all these different projects, is needing to go out and put the post on Upwork and needing to vet through a bunch of people and reading what they've done and reading the reviews and figuring out which is, like, I shouldn't be wasting my time with that, but I've got an assistant who's going to just go and do that. And if you already have the research done, then great. I'm not paying for that time over again, but still, I shouldn't be doing it. I should be handing that off to somebody else.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Awesome. So we talked about technology. We talked about integrating my technology into ChatterBoss. Is there any systems that you that you try to get your clients to adopt in the process of onboarding them? So maybe they don't have a project management system. Do you have certain systems that you have a preference to that you're like, wait, you don't have this? You should use this because all of our people know it.
So we will, as part of our tech stack, you get access to 1Password to share your passwords in a safe way. So that is also where your additional team members, as they come on, will have access. So you know that those are being kept safe. Now, some individuals have their own LastPass or their own 1Password, no problem, we could use that. But if you don't have a password keeper, at the very minimal, we will give you one. With the project management system, we give access to our clients to a Monday.com board for project management. That is what you see in the app in real time in terms of you have access to it. You can even go in and edit and interact with your assistant there. That is usually kind of a gateway for clients if they've never used a project management system to start interacting with one. And then afterwards, they might get comfort level and they want to use Monday.com. That's great. With that said, there's so many different systems, but a lot of the times that just happens just by osmosis of interacting with some of the software. But those would be kind of the only two. And we give you access to a time tracker. And I know that you mentioned that this is not kind of probably applicable or, maybe for attorneys, but we have a time tracker that we use so that you can see hours. And again, sometimes people see that, oh, this is how you use it. And then we like it as well. Google Sites.
What's the time tracker that you use?
We use TimeCamp.
Okay. I never heard of it. Yeah. I think that, and I don't know how you use the time tracker, but I think that it's important for somebody to every once in a while assess where they're spending their time, even if they're not doing it every day, because how else do you identify where are the places that I could hand something off to somebody else? Where could I become more efficient? So tracking my time and then looking not just at what I'm spending my time in totality on, but how am I jumping from task to task? And because that's really where we become highly inefficient is when I spend 5 minutes on email and then I spend 5 minutes on drafting a document that's going to take me an hour. And then I jump back to email for 5 minutes. I go back to the document. Had I just focused on the document, I could have knocked it out in 25 minutes, but instead it took me an hour because every 5 minutes I was in my email again. So identifying that really helps to identify the fact that, oh, I need somebody to be on top of my email so that I don't need to be the one checking it. So here, hand it off or create a system around only checking it a few times a day. But I love having somebody else in the inbox. I personally, so many emails get missed and then people are upset with you, because you missed their email. I get so much junk and it's junk that I want. I want to get that newsletter or that marketing piece. I never read it, but I want to have it in case there's something that catches my attention and I want to look at it, but then everything else gets lost in the process. So really having somebody stay on top of that, I could see as a huge value add.
And I could, make a recommendations. Perhaps you already do that. But one of the things that works for our entrepreneurs is that when we're in the inbox, we find that there are some newsletters or some content that the entrepreneur is attached to receiving and oftentimes doesn't necessarily interact with. And it creates an opportunity for things to be missed. And so if you guys haven't started using filters in your inbox, it's a great way, not saying unsubscribe from this piece of content, but move it into a different inbox and then potentially, couple that up with time blocking. Every Saturday when I'm drinking my coffee, I'm going to look at this newsletter. Maybe you will, maybe you won't, but that it's organized there, it's for you there, and it is not in the way of the other things. So those are some of the strategies that the assistants may offer to the clients, and that you can also implement yourselves, but you probably should have someone implement.
Yeah, so one of the things that I use a tool called SaneBox. I don't know if you heard
Mhm.
of it, but
Yes.
SaneBox does filtering for me automatically, so I didn't have to sit there and set up the filters, and it kind of
Mm.
like just makes its own decisions. And then if something is somewhere where I don't want it, all I do is literally move it, and then the second I move it, it trains it and it sets a rule to move it there. So I love SaneBox. It's very inexpensive. I don't have an affiliate link for it, but just go to SaneBox and check it out. It's been a game changer for me for managing my email. One of the things that in my pipe dream I would have my assistant do is to go into the newsletters I'm interested in, and then to give me like a bullet point list of, hey, here's what you missed yesterday. These emails came in, an email came in from here, and this was what it talked about. An email came in from here, this is what it talked about. And in like 2 seconds I can just breeze through it and say, wait, this looks important to me. Let me, find that email and bring it to my attention. I want to dive into that a little further. Or, this one mentioned a training or a webinar that's happening. I think that's a great topic. I want to do the same thing. Get me that person. Like that's the kind of thing that I'd be looking at and looking for in those emails. I want to see what other people are doing. I want to see what's being talked about in the industry. I want to see what marketing ideas are coming my way. There are certain vendors that I follow that like social media marketing world, digital marketer, where they're like people who I look up to for marketing ideas and things like that. And I don't have time to stay on top of every last thing that they're trying to sell me or send my way. But sometimes there's something that's really interesting and I don't want to miss that. So having somebody filter those and take all the fluff out and just tell me, here's what this was about. There's a workshop coming up and it's this topic and it's $297. Half the time I realize, and it's like 4 weeks have gone by since they started emailing me about it, and its price has gone up 4 times. And now I realize that they have this thing that I want to attend, and I could have bought it for $197, and now I'm paying $997 because I just didn't realize it was there. So that's the kind of stuff that I think, in an ideal world, I would have somebody be doing to try and help me prevent me from missing stuff that I really did want to see.
Yeah. And, in the beginning, we'll have, when we are getting started with our email management kind of relationship, it could be as much as, hey, similar to what you're doing with SaneBox, but now with a person, because certain things require a person. You'll say, hey, do this for me, put this in this board, put this in the ideas for podcasts, put this to here. And then that's how that SOP ends up getting generated. And then going forward, it could just be, pulses in a board. And then the individual then starts to know, then they might even go as far as to take action. And so kind of all of that takes time to cultivate that kind of a relationship. But absolutely, you could get from like idea to like actual execution and having that individual that's managing do the execution for you.
So it's all really interesting. I realized that when you laid out the different categories, I don't think you actually shared the dollar amount. So I just want to review that with you real quick because I asked about the pricing and there are people who are like, wait a second, you didn't give us any pricing.
I'm sorry.
Maybe you shared it and I just
No. I think you're right. I
So
get excited about the concept. And then thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share. At the partner and at the specialist level, it is $50 an hour. At the pro level, it is $35 an hour. And at the admin level, which is the low intensity process fulfillment, that is $25 an hour.
So again, if I go back to, hey, I need a general executive assistant who's going to be in my email, who's going to handle my calendar, who's going to be in tune. Maybe I'm going to start handing off projects to. I don't know. We kind of need to explore that. Which level is that? Is that the $35 an hour level, or is that the $50 an hour level?
Here's what we know. You can hand things off at the partner or at the pro level. That is ultimately your choice. When we take you through that onboarding strategy session, we will give you our recommendations based on what we are seeing could be involved in those tasks and what we are getting an indicator from in terms of your best way of delegating. But ultimately, if we say, look, we think that this is partner level, and you say, I really want a pro, no problem. This is how you delegate to a pro versus this is how you delegate out to a partner. And so you can expect more hand holding at the pro level than at the partner level. But there are some projects that you wouldn't have to tailor the way that you work. They're exactly right for the pro and even at the admin. So we don't just look at it's hard to answer. I'm not kind of trying to avoid it. It's just that we also look at your first 6 months of tasks. So email may easily fall into either partner or pro. It's one of those categories. But if we see in the first 6 months, 75% lies with partner level support, we will suggest a partner level assistant first. But if we see that only 1 or 2 things need a partner and the rest is pro, then we'll start with a pro and maybe add a specialist as needed. So it will be really, really customized. But the answer is, if you are having a particular budget, yes, we will set your expectations of what you can expect, and you can choose to work with a pro assistant if that is your preference.
Yeah, I mean, it's no secret. I told you in the green room that we partner with a company called Get Staffed Up. We promote them regularly, and that they only do full-time VAs, right? So you have to get a 40-hour-a-week person. There's no ifs, ands, or buts, and they're not US based. They are, they're fluent in English. They're well-educated people. They're usually in your time zone because they go to South America and stuff like that. It is a wonderful service and fills a need, but there are people who maybe don't need to commit to full time, or maybe they want somebody US based, or maybe they want access to more of a team like you have with the backups and things like that. And we're with Get Staffed Up, they're just getting one person. So when I start looking at the solutions and I say, well, a Get Staffed Up person costs $18.50 a month, and I start to divide that by $50 an hour, that's 37 hours, divide that by 4 weeks. That's basically once I hit 10 hours a week with my $50 an hour EA, it might already start to make sense for me to consider, do I want to opt now for a full-timer from Get Staffed Up and get 40 hours a week instead of 10 hours a week? And clearly there may be a quality difference, right? It may be that the $50 an hour person is a significantly higher caliber than what I would get with Get Staffed Up. But that's how, so I'm an accountant and I'm a numbers guy, and that's how my mind works. So I start to immediately say, okay, like if I'm going to push my podcast listeners to check this out, it's a no-brainer if you're under 10 hours a week of work. Right. And because you're going to come out ahead. So you may as well get help if it means that you're going to save money, not having to have to go to this full-time option, then definitely do that. Start here. If you're already thinking that you need a full-time person, then maybe it's cheaper to start with somebody from Get Staffed Up and then use the ChatterBoss services as a add-on to that once that person starts to have their plate be full. Or if you are completely lost with how to delegate, completely lost with what to give the person, you need direction, you need somebody to write SOPs for you, then maybe engage ChatterBoss. Let them work with you, do the legwork, and take it from there. We talked about having a buyout clause in there. Are you able to share like approximately what the salary level is if I were to buy somebody out and hire them? What salary range am I looking at to bring them in-house?
Yeah, it's interesting because, and I never expected this as a business owner, but actually a lot of our assistants, they love this business model as much as the clients. And so sometimes it's happened that if you that the assistant is wanting actually a higher rate than they would be getting through ChatterBoss if they go for the to work directly for the entrepreneur. So that's right. Interesting and important because it's a lot more pressure, especially if they don't have access anymore to ChatterBoss. They don't have access to the backup. They feel they can't take as much of a day off, right? Or if they go for 4 hours somewhere, they know that they're covered because there's a backup. So, so that ends up, I will say, maybe a 20 to 25% increase over what they are getting paid through ChatterBoss is what they would want if they're working directly for the entrepreneur. And it's different in every case, and we'll have sometimes if the entrepreneur wants to have that conversation, that's great. If you guys want ChatterBoss to participate in that conversation, is great. One of our core values is transparency. And so for that reason, right, well, we've kind of put all of our cards on the table, and then the entrepreneur, both for the entrepreneur and for the assistant. And then we've been able to come to really good solutions for both parties, and where there's mutual understanding what the other needs. And so that's been very nice. But that's how it usually works. But for the entrepreneur, it ends up being less than what they pay through ChatterBoss, ultimately, right?
Yeah, I have two more quick questions. We're really out of time, so I want to wrap up the interview. But these questions have come up in the past with my own virtual staff, as well as clients of mine, and they don't even think about asking these questions up front. But the first thing is do you have, like, I assume that your assistants are full-time, they're on W-2, payroll and stuff like that. Do they get sick and vacation pay? Do they get maternity leave? Do they get those kind of benefits? And how does that play out for the owner? And I think I know the answer to the question is, well, we have a backup. So, but I just want to double check with you on that. And then the other question, I'll just lead with both questions and then let you answer them both. The other question is around bonuses and financial incentives. So I'm a big proponent of giving staff financial incentives to hit metrics. If we focus on a goal and we focus on these metrics, we can hit it. And then I want to reward my staff for it. How easy or difficult is it for me to provide my assistant a bonus? And does that have to be shared with the backup in some way? And how do you deal with that?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So actually, all of the assistants are 1099 contractors. And so the way that they work is that they choose the client. So this is the other part where our pairing is super important. So it is the assistant choosing you, and is you choosing them. And ultimately, our success has been that mutually beneficial relationship that both of the individuals have, where the assistant, because they love working with you, are executing and are there, et cetera. And in terms of the backup, we do have full-time staff that serve as backup. So these assistants as contractors have the flexibility to do their life the way that they want, but you as a business owner have access to employees that are full-time at their desk at all times that can step in. And that's how we're actually able to offer a response within an hour, usually within minutes, if you guys are using our app and our other means of communication where the backup is monitoring, because we're there and we can take over. So it provides that mutual benefit on both sides. As far as bonuses, if you have as a client, if you're having a great experience with your assistant and you choose to pay them, an incentive or a bonus, that is, 100% up to you as the client. And yes, you're able to arrange that. And if there is anything that ChatterBoss you're needing from us in order to facilitate that, yes, we can. Or some individuals choose to do that directly. So we've kind of had it both ways.
Yeah, I mean, the only problem with doing it directly is if it's in excess of $600, now you need to 1099 them potentially. Mm-hmm. So it adds an extra layer of paperwork. Yeah. And you already have a setup or a means of collecting money from me, and you already have a setup or a means to pay them. So, I could see it being easier to just tell you, hey, I want to pay her $1,000 bonus. Charge me $1,000 more on my next invoice. I just don't know if you charge a premium for that or not. I know that some staffing agencies that we've worked with do. Never sat perfectly right with me, especially based on how much some of them charge to do that. But some places it's easier than others to send money to somebody, right? So it really depends on on what it is. But that's what I wanted to explore with you. It sounds like it's a simple process.
Yeah, we would work, one of the things that our clients have access to is unlimited access to their client success team. So in addition to the assistant, they have a client success person that is there if you need additional brainstorming, strategy, some hiccups are happening, you want additional team members. So if there's something that's like unique and specialized like that, we would work that through our client success team.
Awesome. This has been a great conversation and really a unique concept. I mean, it's not so unique, but it's a unique concept in the way that you have all of the backups, the team members and the specialists and all of that. So it's almost like the Swiss Army knife for team building in your business. And I really like the model, and I like it especially for somebody who's I'm not ready yet, right? I'm not ready to hire somebody. I'm not ready to move forward. It's a big commitment. This is not a big commitment. This is $50 an hour, $35 an hour. This is just get your feet wet, start with 5 hours a week, start with 5 hours a month, start with 2-3 hours a week. And just see what you can get off your plate and see how that changes your life. Because one of the biggest things that we don't look at is the opportunity cost of not handing this stuff off to somebody else. And what could you have been busy with that would have been more valuable than the task you just handed off to somebody else? And you start looking at that, where I could have brought in a new client that could have been $10,000, and I gave up on that to save $50, and that's really where we need to start looking in this conversation. And this is a great way to kind of like dip your toe in the water, get your feet wet, try working with somebody, try going through this process. It'll also give you some interview skills. It'll give you some personality assessment skills. You'll start to realize what it's like to work with other people if you haven't had anybody work for you before. So it's really a great way to start team building or to enhance your team building as you go. I love the concept. So tell us how we can take the next step with you if we want to get started. I think it sounds from the interview like it starts with some sort of consultation. And also, if you can just share like one final tip with our audience that's like your top tip from your area of expertise that they can use to make their world better moving forward.
Wow. So in terms of getting started, I know that with this podcast, you'll put a link to have access to the ChatterBoss website. And through the link and through this podcast, listeners have access to 10% discount to a 10% discount to the onboarding fee, as well as a 10% discount on our advanced pairing. And if you guys need the URL, it is profitwithlaw.com/chatterboss. And that's where you're able to schedule the consultation. In terms of top tip, wow. I guess, we've said a lot in this conversation, right? In terms of working with others. And I would say, my top tip for delegating is hire right. And if you don't know how to hire right, do not make that triage hire, right? Work with an agency that can help get you the right individual. But the theme for me over the last few years has been trust, right? Then trust that individual that you have is going to help take your business to the next level. I think that, as you mentioned, delegating, it is like a muscle. You need to start somewhere. And so that is the reason why we have this model. It gives opportunity to individuals, even if it's something trivial for 1 hour a week, just to continue delegating out. But you know what? With seeing hundreds of entrepreneurs delegate, people have a way, as long as the pairing is right, people have a way of living into the expectations of others. And so if you start that relationship from, I'm excited and I trust you, and you just get a much stronger result from, I am skeptical and I'm not sure. And, that's where sometimes we go into micromanaging territory. So that's my, my biggest lesson.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Valerie. This has been amazing. Folks, this was a long episode, but we bring the best to you right here on the Profit with Love podcast. Valerie, it's been a great conversation, and definitely want to continue the conversation offline with you because I think there's a lot of opportunity for us internally to try your service out and then be able to talk about it from our own perspective. So we will definitely take a look at that. Folks, if this is your first time listening to the podcast, make sure to hit that subscribe button so that you get notified every time we release a new episode. And we would love it if you gave us a rating and review. We're here every Tuesday and Thursday, so just come check us back out on Tuesday. Take care. We'll see you soon. Have you been enjoying the show? We sure hope so. To make sure you never miss an episode, be sure to hit the subscribe button in your podcast player app. Next week, we will be back with more valuable resources and ideas on how to break the mold and take your law firm to the next level.